Hey guys, I've actually got a pretty interesting indie game for you today. No, that was not a clickbait title. Well, maybe a little. But no, this really is quite a bit like Breath of the Wild, which you'll see once we get into how the gameplay works. Especially the exploration element, which is the main reason you'd be playing this game. So do not do your typical, oh wow, I didn't like that title, so I'm going to dislike this video. It's happened to me one too many times at this point. Be honest with yourselves, would you have clicked on this if it said Sable Review? You know the answer. So, I was actually fortunate enough that Raw Fury, the publisher of this game, provided me with a review code. I guess I'm finally moving up in the world. So, I'd like to think that that wouldn't affect my objectivity. But, you know, full disclosure, if you have a problem with that, well, you know, do what you gotta do, right? So, of course, the question is the game good? Well, before we get into that, do the things the algorithm likes. You all know what that means, especially if I'm covering an indie game that nobody watches the video. Just take one look at my last review. So please, if you enjoy this content, like and comment, because YouTube gets mad at me otherwise. And subscribe if you'd want to see more of this kind of stuff. And without further ado, let's perform the gliding. I'm going to start off with the positives because people often say my reviews are too negative. And honestly, with a game like this, you do need to take into account the positives before we talk about the negatives, just so that you know if this game is for you. I'm also cutting a little bit of slack for this game because the company that developed it, Shedworks, is literally 2 people. Yes, this is one of those types of indie games. So the important question is, what type of game is Sable exactly? Well, this is a pure adventure game or exploration game, whatever you would really want to call it. There is no combat. None. 0. So if that's a deal breaker, well, understandable. I normally wouldn't exactly play this type of game myself. That being said, judging it purely as an exploration game, this is a good game, 100%. Essentially, it's a coming-of-age tale. You're playing as a girl named Sable, and I guess as you transition into adulthood, you basically have to make this nomadic journey around this alien planet, help out some people with their problems, get these badges, which gives you these masks, and whatever mask you choose essentially determines your destiny, more or less. That's what I gathered. So to help you on your quest, you're given 2 main things to assist you. 1, you have the ability to glide at any time. So I suppose this would be the equivalent of Link's parachute. And yeah, it's incredibly useful, has very little drop off actually. So you can glide pretty far. Also, much like Breath of the Wild, you can climb almost any surface. There are certain surfaces you can't climb, mostly just metal, which is similar to how you couldn't climb walls in the trials in Breath of the Wild, right? And the other main tool you're given is a glider, which is essentially a pod racer.
Now this is pod racing.
Bro, you just posted grand you are going to lose subscribers.
And given these tools, you basically explore the world, complete quests for people, find all these chum eggs, which these little flying worm dudes lay, and then you bring it to the queen, and she expands your stamina bar. And so the reason I would say this game is good is simply because it is a perfect chill game, or I guess as the kids would say, Kino.
How do you do, fellow kids?
I'm assuming I'm saying that correctly. I feel like a boomer just saying it. Sometimes the simple appeal of a game like this is like the famous Todd Howard quote.
That mountain is not just a backdrop. You can walk all the way to the top of that mountain.
Honestly, the man has like 1,000 quotable things, so I forgive you if you don't remember that one. If you really like a slower paced experience, where you're kind of just exploring this massive world and seeing all these cool locations, and completing some creative quests, I was surprised. While a lot of the ones in the beginning are basically just fetch quests, there's also a mystery that you have to solve. There's a sort of like tracking scavenger hunt type of mission that was kind of fun. I'm sure there's plenty of other ones here. I haven't exactly 100% the game. And really, if you like the game, completely comes down to if you think exploring exotic locations and climbing up surfaces is fun. because that's what you're going to do 99% of the time. Another upside that I'm sure was immediately apparent is the art style. It definitely looks unique. This whole like line art, pastel, I don't even know really what to call it. I'm not exactly an artist, but it looks really nice. And the game's knights are completely unique visually because everything becomes very monochrome. But you can still distinguish yourself from the backgrounds pretty well because of those hard black lines around your character. So I thought that was pretty unique. I guess talking to NPCs in the world can be seen as a plus. They'll give you some more background information about how the world works and how these people have adapted to this alien planet. Which that's one of the more interesting parts of the game, is that it's sort of a retro future style. It actually reminds me a lot of Xenogears, though that was a major spoiler for Xenogears. Clearly, an advanced human civilization crashed on this planet a long time ago. And now these nomadic tribes are exploring the wreckage of their ancestors with super advanced technology in this desert world, right? If you played Xenogears, you know the connection there. Another game I could compare this to that it reminds me of quite a bit is Grow Home and Grow Up, which were basically low-budget Ubisoft titles created by a skeleton crew that I guess were led to do their own thing. It's a shame that Ubisoft doesn't do stuff like that anymore because I actually like those games quite a bit because they're basically collectathon platformers with a more exploratory spin on them. And so this game's a little bit like that. And yeah, that pretty much covers the upsides. Now for the downsides. Like I said before, the biggest downside is there is no combat. Now I would say not every game needs combat, but I don't like walking simulators. And this game can feel a little bit like a walking simulator. Walking and climbing, I suppose. It certainly has more substance than something like Gone Home. A lot more substance, I would say. But this game really needed something that made you feel like you were gaining skill in some way, or progressing beyond just an increasing stamina bar or a slightly faster glider. If not combat, then maybe some more movement abilities that made climbing feel more interactive. You know, maybe like a hang glider or something that you could sway down and up to gain more speed or get more air with updrafts or something to that effect. Maybe a low-powered jetpack that you could upgrade with things found in the world. Now I'm basically just stealing stuff from Grow Home. But you know what I mean. The game needs to feel more like a game instead of just an interactive experience. Another big downside is I would say the world is a little too big given the low density of unique locations. I mean, if you take a game like Wind Waker, right, which a lot of people have said is a little too empty, that game still had pretty decent location per square nautical mile, I guess you could say. I don't know the exact distances, but it felt like islands were much closer together than, say, this game where you could travel across the sands for 5 straight minutes in certain areas and not find a single unique location. Other than that, the only things that come to mind are the minor performance issues. For some people, apparently these have been worse than for me. But yeah, there's a lot of micro stuttering, there's frame rate drops in certain areas of the map. I had a lot of weird audio issues where audio would either cut out or sometimes it would loop over and over again. And also the climbing is a little glitchy sometimes. Climbing onto a ledge doesn't always work. Sometimes it'll just repeat the animation 3 or 4 times before you finally climb up the ledge. Other than that, that pretty much covers it. I had a pretty good time with the game, even though this is definitely not my type of game. Which might be funny to some of you, because you know I really enjoy 3D platformers, but the appeal is completely different. Like I've said before, my favorite game of all time is Spyro. A level in Spyro is about 5 minutes long to 100%. In this game, you could spend 20 minutes trying to figure out how to climb a mountain. So the pacing is very different. But yeah, the lack of any combat, or as far as I'm aware, there's no failure state either. There's no fall damage. So I don't know if it's even possible to die in this game. So that could be another downside for some people. But I'd say, judging the game purely based on what it tried to achieve, it did a very good job. especially for being primarily developed by 2 people. This is pretty impressive, I'm not gonna lie. Now, one more thing that might make some of you reconsider getting this game is that it is $25. Now, compared to the game I just reviewed, this is much more worth that price point. But $25 is still pretty high for an indie game. $20 would have been a little bit more reasonable for sure. But I'll honestly leave that up to you, because it's not often a game like this comes around. And obviously I received this game for free, so, you know, my opinion might be slightly slanted in a certain direction on that. But yeah, all in all, Sable is definitely a quality game. Kind of a sleeper hit of 2021, I dare say. But certainly not a perfect game by any stretch. But I hope that Shedworks takes what they learned here, maybe expand in a sequel, at the very least provide more interesting mechanics. If they don't want to have combat in their game, they should try and find a way to make exploration feel less repetitive. And also, I don't know, just make the world more dense. That's really my main advice. But very good effort. If this game looks even slightly interesting to you, I would recommend checking it out. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Definitely do the things the algorithm likes, because I know most of my audience doesn't like indie games. So, every person who watched this video, please engage with the algorithm just so that this doesn't bomb horribly. Not even just for my sake, but for Shedworks' sake, to be honest. I want to be able to do more indie games, but I don't think almost any of my subs want to see that. So maybe I can find some subs who do. But if you're the type of person who watches, you know, any of my videos because it's me, thank you. I know you're in the minority. I always appreciate it. As for next video, I guess I'm going to do top 5 overrated games, because it seems to be what people want to see. I'll try not to piss off every fan base of every franchise. Look, I'm not that much of a contrarian, to be honest. Though I may think many games are overrated, not as overrated enough to make the list. You might actually be surprised. Alright, that's it. See you next time, guys.